This video in our media theory series goes back to the roots. It's going to be the first video in the series. Immanuel Kant and Karl Marx are not commonly known as media theorists, especially not since they lived long before radio and TV, the internet and social media. And yet, they set the stage for most media theory after them. Kant's perhaps most popular work is a short essay answering the question, what is enlightenment? It was published in 1784 in a magazine in Berlin, the Berlinische Monatsschrift, or Berlin Monthly. It's a highly programmatic essay that promotes the Enlightenment as the decisive turning point in human history. The Enlightenment for Kant is the transition of humankind from a long state of immaturity or childhood to maturity or adulthood. He proposed that this transition was taking place just at his time and at his place, that is in Europe. And he believed his own philosophy played an essential role in it, as did the mass media. Before the Enlightenment, Kant suggests, people hadn't made proper use of their intelligence. They generally didn't think rationally and reasonably. The highest truth were illusionary religious narratives. People were intellectually like kids. They believed in some fantasy stories. What is more, they were unfree. Because they couldn't think rationally, they were unable to guide themselves. They lacked autonomy. They lacked the capacity to understand what is right and true and to act accordingly. An irrational religion not only controlled people's minds, it also propped up repressive powers that controlled people socially and politically. If we use reason properly, Kant thought, we can find and agree on logical and mathematical laws. We can discover the laws of nature, which replace irrational religious worldviews. And the best is, with a new philosophical science, made by no other than Kant himself, reason can give a proper and complete account of itself. If we use reason correctly, we, that is coincidentally also Kant himself, can even establish foundational moral laws that reasonable people will eventually have to agree on, just like they can understand and agree on scientifically proven natural laws. Based on such a moral science, we can develop reasonable legal norms and political systems, and thereby guide ourselves in everything, rather than depending on the church or on monarchs to unreasonably tell us what to do. There's a catch, though. How can philosophical, moral, and social sciences emerge in a still largely unenlightened society? It's very difficult for people, however intelligent they may be, to grow up, to become reasonable and autonomous when they live among the unenlightened. It's basically Plato's allegory of the cave problem all over again for Kant. How to make people who are used to a world of illusions and a life in chains change their minds and their way of life. He writes, "It's difficult for each separate individual to work his way out of the immaturity which has become almost second nature to him. In a yet unenlightened world, it's difficult even for a smart person to become autonomous. But the emergence from such self-imposed bondage is exactly what the Enlightenment was supposed to be all about, as Bob Marley says in very Kantian fashion.
Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind.
Both Kant and Marley make it pretty clear that Enlightenment liberation will be different from Plato's allegory of the cave. It cannot be done by one savior alone. It's a collective, collaborative effort. Kant says, so far, only a few, by cultivating their own minds, have succeeded in freeing themselves from immaturity. And that's not really enlightenment yet. To bring about wider social enlightenment, we need, Kant stresses, an entire public enlightening itself. Bob Marley puts it this way.
Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom?
Unlike Bob Marley, Kant, however, didn't believe that singing songs together is a good way to collectively promote the Enlightenment. Instead, he thought the best way would be the public use of reason. This meant to do precisely what Kant did when he published his essay in the Berlin Monthly. Write down reasonable argumentations and make them publicly accessible to a reasonable public that is then given the opportunity to reasonably reflect and respond. This is how Kant defined the public use of reason. I mean that use which anyone may make of it as a man of learning addressing the entire reading public. When pointing out that public reason was to address the entire reading public, Kant obviously envisioned the print media to be its forum. This is how Kant's notion of enlightenment is directly connected with the mass media. And this is why he's a predecessor of 20th century mass media theory. The public use of reason has the mass media as its platform. And the mass media are in turn functionally defined as ideally the voice of reason. To be the voice of reason, it's important that the mass media are liberated. Kant suggests all we need is freedom.
Freedom, breathing.
He writes, "For enlightenment of this kind, all that is needed is freedom, and the freedom in question is the most innocuous form of all. Freedom to make public use of one's reason in all matters." In essence, Kant calls for freedom of the press, actually an often heard call in both the American and French revolutions that were happening in Kant's lifetime. On the one hand, Kant demanded that anything could be discussed and critiqued in the public space constituted by the press. But, on the other hand, media freedom also needs to be strictly limited, according to Kant. Only reasonable people are to have this freedom, and only as long as they express themselves reasonably. All women, for instance, or as Kant says, the entire fair sex, still remain, unfortunately, in a state of intellectual immaturity, and are therefore generally not yet capable of proper reasoning. When Kant wrote men of learning, he actually meant men, not women. And even reasonable educated men are only to be given freedom of expression insofar as they speak in a public, not in a private function. This is to say, whenever one speaks, as Kant says, in a particular civil post or office with which he is entrusted, he needs to follow the rules. Social order must coexist with the public use of reason. Kant famously or notoriously summarized this in the maxim, "Argue as much as you like and about whatever you like, but obey." To argue here means to express reasonable argumentations in an educated, informed way to an educated, informed readership. And obey means you can only speak out if this doesn't violate the duties you have within the social and political order. One example given by Kant is, it would be very harmful if an officer receiving an order from his superiors were to quibble openly, while on duty, about the appropriateness or usefulness of the order in question. He must simply obey, but he cannot reasonably be banned from making observations as a man of learning on the errors in the military service and from submitting these to his public for judgment. Kant's short essay from 1784 anticipates the main talking points of 20th century media theory. First, the media are supposed to function as a public sphere, Öffentlichkeit. Unlike in previous smaller societies, people are no longer expected to debate in person. The media are a virtual space, supposed to be accessible by anyone, irrespective of place and time. Second, media are envisioned as, ideally, the voice of reason. The core function of the media is to be the space for rational, informative, and educating debate. Third, freedom of thought and freedom of the press. The media are supposed to be free from dogmatic control by authorities, such as the church or the aristocracy. Any issue may be addressed. No topic is taboo. Fourth, but at the same time, there is the liberal paradox. Free speech must be protected from those who don't use it properly. Just as today's free speech discourse can be traced back to Kant, so can political correctness. Those are Kantian Enlightenment media theory essentials. But implicit in this vision of the media is another key expectation. As the space for the growth of collective autonomy, the media are also the space where people can express and develop their personal authenticity. In the media, mature, reasonable, self-controlled, and creative men ought to flourish. It's the basic liberal dream, shared by left and right liberals from Jürgen Habermas to Jordan Peterson. So fifth, the media of, by, and for sovereign individuals. Now, fast forward to 1848. About half a century after Kant's Manifesto of the Enlightenment, the Communist Manifesto, co-authored by Marx and Engels, was first published. It's even more programmatic than Kant's essay, and just as influential for 20th century media theory, although it also wasn't intended to be primarily about media. The Communist Manifesto begins with a famous metaphor. A specter is haunting Europe. This specter is communism, and it's a specter for two reasons. It's uncanny and feared. And it's feared and uncanny because it's not clearly seen. People only heard horror stories about it so far. For communism to succeed, it's crucial that it's transformed from a specter into something commonly known and therefore no longer frightening. Marx and Engels write, "It is high time that communists should openly, in the face of the whole world, publish their views, their aims, their tendencies, and meet this nursery tale of the specter of communism with a manifesto of the party itself." The mass media, that is in the 19th century print media, are key to starting the world revolution. To this end, communists of various nationalities have assembled in London and sketched the following manifesto to be published in the English, French, German, Italian, Flemish, and Danish languages. Many more languages were to follow. The Communist Manifesto includes, in effect, a revolutionary update of Kant's key points on the media. The media as a global public sphere. The media as a voice of revolutionary reason. The media as a space where communist liberation can be freely outlined and spread. But the Communist Manifesto also anticipates some core 20th century media theory ideas that go beyond Kant. Long before today's open media and free software movements, Marx and Engels already noted that we have intercourse in every direction, universal interdependence of nations. And as in material, so also in intellectual production. The intellectual creations of individual nations become common property. Media do not just spread information. They also make intellectual production a collective effort. Because of the global media, it's difficult to privately monopolize intellectual creations. They are prone to be shared, to become common property. What is more, the media do not just promote the creation of common property. They are also the virtual space, the new commons where the revolutionary movement assembles and acts. The Communist Manifesto says, "At this stage, the laborers still form an incoherent mass, scattered over the whole country, and are broken up by their mutual competition. The union is helped on by the improved means of communication that are created by modern industry and that place the workers of different localities in contact with one another. It was just this contact that was needed to centralize the numerous local struggles, all of the same character, into one national struggle between classes. Workers of the world, unite! The Communist Manifesto ends with this appeal, because the unity of the workers is the precondition of the triumph of the revolution. And this worldwide unity of workers in turn depends not just on earlier means of communication like ships and trains. It depends on new means of communication, especially the print media, which will be not just the means, but the virtual space of revolution. Let's keep in mind that both Marx and Lenin were journalists. Marx and Engels add two more key points to earlier Enlightenment media theory. First, the media as the space that connects and unites people, especially the oppressed. And second, the media as the revolutionary space, collectively owned and operated by the people. To sum up, for Kant, the mass media are the public forum for free rational debate. They bring about the self-enlightenment of humankind. They are crucial for the progress of reason. For Marx, the mass media educate and unite the oppressed. They are the public space where social action takes place. They are crucial for revolutionary progress. Throughout this video series, it should become obvious how modern media theory reacts to Kant's and Marx's vision of the media as, ideally, the forum where humankind educates itself, the voice of reason. The place where people have a voice, the sphere of regulated free speech. The site that connects, the commons that all can join, the engine of progress, the space for social change. Some theorists embrace these optimistic visions. Others argue that the media failed to live up to their promises. But most accept those promises as the basic framework of modern media theory. Only at the end of the 20th century, media theory increasingly departs from its roots in Kant and Marx. And only in the 21st century, it begins to dawn on it that perhaps the media have never been a tool of the Enlightenment, a harbinger of the revolution, and a space of sovereign individuality. Instead, we will see at the end of this series, the media may turn out to have been, from the start, something very different. An amplifier of second-order observation, a complex way of seeing and showing ourselves that is pushing us beyond the age of authenticity and into the age of propheticity.